So welcome. My name is Dawn Salerno. I am Zooming to you from the Roach Jones Duff House at 396 County Street in New Bedford, Mass. What I love about virtual is that we could possibly have people tuned in from all over the world. But welcome here. If it's your first time, even virtually, to the RJD, thanks for coming. Welcome back. And due to the pandemic, we are doing a lot of our fall programs just like this, virtually, with the exception of 3 Fridays in December, 4, 11, and I think 18 are the 3 Fridays, the first 3 Fridays from 5 to 8 p.m. We have a garden here. We have an acre of property and a garden, and we will be open those evenings for safe outdoor visitation. The grounds will be decorated, illuminated with lights. We're going to have hot chocolate, music, various activities those 3 nights, different activities, starting with the first Friday is the ugly sweater contest. So get ready because the holidays are coming and we will be here for you both virtually and in person. So some logistics before we get started. As I said, we were recording this, and the nice thing is if your internet gets patchy, you can see us again on YouTube, our YouTube channel, sometime in the near future. And while Dan and Nick are speaking, we're going to ask you to be just as you are now, muted mics, muted cameras, but we'll welcome you to unmute when we do Q&A at the end. This is a history happy hour, and that's the name of this program. It's our newest program. The next one is November 10th with Allie Copeland, art curator at the New Bedford Free Public Library, and she's going to be talking about The Black Sheep by Francis David Millay. So you can be right back here, November 10th, 5:30 p.m. All of this information is on our website. And I will mention just tonight's event had no registration fee. You'll notice we, like many, went to virtual, but it's much harder to, to grab ticket fees or ask for a fee because you're not literally walking through the door. So I put a link in the chat, and if you're able to give anything, you can donate any amount. We always appreciate that. We do a lot of free programs like AHA nights and those December nights. So it just helps us out. And that again is in the chat. So now about our speakers, we are going to be starting with a beer tasting. I wish I was there with Nick and had the beers to taste myself, but the idea is we will list these beers ahead of time on our Facebook page and our website, and you can taste from home. But in any case, Nick Serpa is a bartender at Play Arcade and Bar in downtown New Bedford. The link's in the chat. He's also our resident History Happy Hour bartender, so he'll be doing your tasting tonight. And following him, we have Dan Everton, who was born and raised right here in New Bedford. He graduated from UMass Dartmouth with a degree in history and a minor in Black Studies. He's also a trained archaeologist and researches themes of colonization, sex, gender, and print material culture. He has just been accepted to Brown University in the Public Humanities program, and he'll be talking after Nick does our tasting. So with that said, I am going to mute my own self, and Nick, you can take it away.
Okay, so my name is Nicholas Serpa. As Dawn said, I am your resident bartender. I work over at Play Arcade, which is where Slancha used to be, right on Union. Today we're going to be looking at 2 beers. First is going to be something called Fest Beer by Weihenstephaner. This comes all the way from Germany. It's 5.8%, 26 IBUs. If you understand what I'm saying, it's not very bitter, as IBU stands for International Bitterness Unit, and it's on a scale of 1 to 200. So 26 is really, really low. So this beer goes down really, really easy. Now, so as you probably noticed, this is a Fest beer. When you think Fest, you probably think Oktoberfest. That goes on in Germany during the last 2 weeks of September into the first week of October. They do a whole lot of drinking of this kind of beer here. And as I said before, this is Weihenstephaner Fest beer. Comes directly from Germany, probably the oldest brewery in the world. So we'll take you through it right off the bat. You got a nice straw color, a nice decent head right up there. Smells like biscuits, honestly, malty biscuits. It's very, very light, very clean, very crisp. I just don't see anything wrong with this beer. It's a good one. It makes you think the leaves are going to start falling soon. The days are getting a little bit colder. group up with your friends when you're able to and put a couple of these back. Now, if you'll pardon me, I have to get my notes going here. So Oktoberfest, as I'm sure you're all aware, takes place, like I said, in those last 2 weeks of September, first 2 weeks of October. It actually attracts over 6 million people over the course of those 16 or so days. And in 2013, they served 7.7 million liters of beer just like this. And oh boy, one day I'm going to go, and it's going to be a good time. Secondly, we have something that's really near and dear to my heart. And actually, I'll move a little closer because it matches my shirt so well. This is Left Hand Milk Stout Nitro. This is one of my favorite beers. I cannot recommend it enough. Go get a 6-pack of it. But there's something really interesting about this beer. Left Hand was actually the first craft brewery to bottle a beer that's nitrogenated rather than bubbled with CO2. So consequently, we have to pour it a little bit differently. So we're going to take we always use a regular pint glass here. We live in New England, and then we're just going to literally tip it over and go just like that. Because you have to release all that nitrogen. See, fits into the glass perfectly. What you can probably see is the cascading effect right there. You'll forgive me, my room is a little bit dark, but we're going to let that settle for just a little while because you want to focus on this up here. All of this needs to disperse, so we're not going to drink that just yet. While it's doing that, I'm actually going to tell you a little bit about this beer. So it has smooth and creamy. It has notes of coffee and chocolate, roastiness, and just a little bit of black coffee in the end. 6% by volume, brewed in Longmont, Colorado by Left Hand Brewing Company. Now, this, as I said, is one of my favorite beers. It actually garners a 3.94 out of 5 in the global community. Out of 312,000 votes, it is just a good beer. Please go get it, try it. Don't be afraid. You know, it's getting colder, so it's stout season. Oh, it's just perfect. Pours pitch black, nice thick head up here. Smells like coffee. Tastes like coffee, velvety, and it's just good. So I will turn it over to Dan. Remember, Wine has Stefaner, Fest beer, Left Hand Milk Stout Nitro, Germany, America. We're making good beer. Dan, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Nick. That was really great and interesting. I did not know that history about Oktoberfest. And funnily enough, I was just at kind of like, as we're doing now in this new normal, we have been like just doing like online academic stuff. And one of the visits I got to do was a presenter about breweries in ancient Egypt. So it's kind of funny that like thinking about beer and then remembering, oh yeah, like the olden days when we used to just drink it as a meal because it was liquid bread. So I'm excited to try those out. So as Dawn mentioned, I'm Dan Everton. I'm born and raised in New Bedford. And so I'm in charge. I say that kind of, I'm the manager really, because it's really a community archive. So I am in charge of the New Bedford LGBTQ Archive. And what that means is, both as a queer archive and a community archive, is that it is community based. So we don't have like a museum or anything like attached to it. It is also like not, it doesn't have to be managed by someone who is an archivist. I'm technically not an archivist. I am, again, trained as a historian and an archaeologist, which is pretty adjacent to it, but it's still not proper archiving. Community archives have been kind of a little thing now lately, especially since like, I want to say about 2013 is when we started seeing, especially with these smaller histories, like one that the New Bedford Historical Society does, and they're collecting, those are kind of considered community archives. Not a lot of attention or money is paid attention to those, so it's really up to like the grouping of people who are just invested in this kind of history, especially also invested in the history of the city. So what I do as the manager is essentially go to people, explain what an archive is, first of all, because not many people know. The mystery is like, oh, I'm just putting my stuff in a place that I can't go at all or visit. It is usually, mostly archives are just closed off just to academics to go visit. But what's nice is that we have a partnership with the UMass Dartmouth Special Archives and Collection, which operates a public archive. So that means anyone in the world, academic, layperson, I'm just curious about something, can request an appointment and go and actually visit some of the stuff that they have. Now, archives have sometimes artifacts like stuff that I dig up at an archaeological dig, or they have documents. So like really old newspapers on microfilm or actual physical copies, you can find those at the Special Archives and Collection. They also have a significant Portuguese American archive. So there's a lot of like old passports, etc. I donated my family's digital copies of this kind of information. And it also serves as a repository for genealogical research. So if you're interested in your history and you're like, you know, Jose Picasso is like my great grandfather, and I heard he came here to New Bedford specifically this time period. You can search the archive, find out some documents from him, and probably learn a lot more. So what do we do with queer history then? Queer history, what we're trying to get for is a lot of the storytelling, weird ephemera, and ephemera is like, you know, we had Pride last year for, at two sections. We had Pride AHA Block Party, and we also had Pride and Buttonwood Park. So the kind of like pamphlets, pins, cool pictures that people took, those are all things that can actually go into the archive. And because of COVID, I can't accept physical items, but we are doing a big expansion to operate a digital archive. So we can actually take in digital items and have stuff that we can then share to the public. So sadly, because of COVID, I can't accept a lot of items. My goal actually was, in theory, was the summertime, I'd have a lot of events, collecting a bunch of stuff, and I could actually show it to you guys of like, this is the stuff I found and collected from really cool people. And, you know, there's a bunch of photos from the 80s in New Bedford and the gay scene there. But sadly, I haven't been able to collect those things. So my hope is to basically tell you guys, this is an archive that's actually going on. It is it is community based. So it's really dependent on the investment of the people in the community here, not just to give stuff, but also to kind of care about it and talk about it and actually be invested in the growth of it, because it doesn't exist unless we have a community. And we actually do have a really good community here, both queer and otherwise, in New Bedford. And that's pretty much it. And I wanted to open up for questions because I know most people have questions, just general queer history in New Bedford, or, you know, what it is that I do, or what is queer history in general. So, Dawn, if we want to open up the room, we can go ahead and do that.
Sure. So we welcome anyone that wants to join to unmute your camera, or you can ask a question in chat if you prefer that. Dan, I mean, I wouldn't mind if you answered all those questions you just listed for us. You know, what is, you know, just like a basic definitions and, you know, even the current state of any LGBTQ history record in this city would be interesting to know, which I assume you're looking at.
One of the interesting things is that we're actually one of 3 archives that are queer themed in the state. So there's Boston's, which is the History Project. They have really cool events too, and they have some digital repositories. Repositories, sorry, is a fancy word for like box of stuff. I guess you can consider a storage locker a repository if you really wanted to like figure out anything, which many archives are actually in storage locker type things. You know, because of space. There's a lot of things to put a lot of places. For a record, the archive is specifically looking at things like early whaling history, which is kind of a small specialty that I do. The puzzles attack that happened back in, God, it escapes me. I was alive during that and I remember it happening, but it was in the early 2000s. Where a gay club in New Bedford was attacked by a gentleman with a gun and a hatchet. So kind of looking at those kind of big trauma events that happen in the queer community as well. And we also have the marriage equality. So again, Massachusetts had marriage equality prior to the country actually having it. And so what we did is there was a lot of activism from people just here and broadly working in the state. And so we were able to have some oral histories, which is kind of like fancy interviews that are somewhat thematic and somewhat biographical. That's a word. I'm going to say that biographical. That's the word. Biographical in nature about a specific person. And so we have a lot of those. And so one of my times that I'm spending is really just transcribing them. So that way people can go look through them and find keywords and stuff like that. So if you wanted to learn about what was the activism like in New Bedford for queer people, like if you just did a quick like Google search in an ideal world, you'll be able to find that audio clip and our archive and be able to listen to it and learn a bit more about it.
Great. Well, I see that Nick got one question too from David about how does nitro compare to Irish stout? And if you look at the chat, you see the answer. Stouts are typically more dry, whereas milk sweet stout is just that, sweet. And I guess my follow-up question is, what would make a beer, because I am not a beer drinker, so disclaimer, how do you make something sweet or dry? How do you make a beer sweet or dry? Is it in the hops?
It all comes down to what's being used to make the beer the way it is. So like, for instance, if you look at the bottle itself, it says ingredients are Rocky Mountain water, malted barley, lactose, flaked oats, hops, and yeast. I don't have Guinness's ingredients, but it's just what goes into it is, and then what comes out. You know, if you add too much cream to coffee, it's sweeter. If you add less cream, it's less sweet. That's really what it boils down to. But nitro is actually a way a beer is served, not a style. This is a milk sweet stout. Irish stouts are more dry. Like if you had a glass of champagne, sometimes that's more dry, whereas like a spumante is more sweet.
We have a question I will read to you from Melanie, who asks, what future plans do you have for the archive and how has the community interacted with it?
Thank you for the question, Melanie. Oh, hi, seeing you on
Hi.
here.
I'm outside, so I was, sort of muted so it wouldn't make a lot of noise.
So basically, my hope and future plans are essentially kicking up an endeavor to that. It's going to probably be digital for a while because of COVID. Like I can't accept any physical items because according to the American Library Association and the American Archive Association, I'd have to quarantine items for a week. And I'm actually the one, all the stuff is actually in my house. I can't bring it to the campus to live because they're not accepting anything because of the quarantine. So I have no ability to quarantine any items right now. So what I'm really focusing on is digital stuff. So those oral histories, people, if they scanned their old photos and sent it to me that way, I will put my email in the chat. So like in case anyone here did have something that they wanted to send digitally, they can always send it to me there. And another future thing, I hope that when we have some actual items in the archive itself at UMass Dartmouth campus, that I could do like tours or have little talks there too, and kind of specific presentations, because not only am I collecting these items to kind of have for the community to have and kind of look at, but I really hope that academics will be able to look at history in Massachusetts and not just be specific to Boston, because that's the big majority chunk that we think of, or the lesbian activism in Western Mass with Amherst and Hampshire and them. And to also think about us, essentially, when they think about LGBTQ history in the States or in New England.
Sorry, I have a follow-up. Do you mind talking a little bit about choosing UMass as the repository for your items versus other local institutions like the library, the art, or Whalen Museum, or any of those places?
So it really comes down to institutions have different qualifications or requirements, if you will. So like, it's kind of like, I wouldn't go to a Dick's Sporting Good and expect to like drop off kittens or something like they're not going to accept that, obviously, because it's way out of their purview. And so, and it's also about rights too. So like technically the Whaling Museum has a sort of public archive in that you have to pay to go in there, or you have to be an academic or representing them to actually visit. The library only accepts a certain kind of thing. I actually work at the library currently, so they have a very strict like kind of guidelines of what qualifies for history, and typically it's actually older stuff that we're collecting. And that UMass Dartmouth is actually the closest that actually operates as a public archive. I actually had the fortune that when I worked at, when I was attending UMass, I got to work there, kind of see how they work. And so Sonia Pacheco, really amazing archivist and historian, she does a lot of the work. And so she's actually my direct like link or partner in the project itself. And so, I picked it because it's an easy, convenient place to go to. It is also close to any, like if an academic had to come and fly in, they could go to get a hotel or whatever. And also like it's to the students too. So like if I was a student going to UMass again and I wanted to learn about queer history, there's something right there that I can go to and access easily. So it just became convenient for those kind of few reasons.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for the question, Melanie. So it looks like David's going to volunteer for both of us. He's new to the area. Great. We're going to snap you up, David. Everyone needs volunteers, so
yes.
You can volunteer, full time if you want.
Can you see me, by the way?
I can see your picture, David. Yeah, we can hear you too, though, if you want to ask a question.
I wonder why my image isn't coming up. My camera must be off for whatever reason. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem.
That's
I saw
right.
you briefly, but I think it must have been like, it could also be internet connection. Sometimes Zoom will automatically be like, no, you don't need a camera because your connection might be bad or something.
Yeah, for some strange reason, I've only joined a Zoom once before this and it worked fine. I could see my image up there as well as everyone else's. And for some reason, I don't know, I'm not an expert at computer things, so. Oh,
That's fine, David. Thank you for offering to volunteer. Do you have any questions specifically, or?
No specific questions at the moment. I guess maybe I would, so I tried to become a volunteer at the history project in Boston, but I never followed through, and I tried following through again, but for whatever reason, I think they must have enough volunteers. But you're absolutely right. That is a wonderful organization. We're all lucky to have that in Boston, even being down here. And because I think it is important to record gay history. There's a lot to be proud of that's started, it started even before, of course, Stonewall, but I mean, it just depends where you want to begin the story. It goes, way, way, I mean, it's there's been gay people forever, so.
The History Project has a really great book. I just moved to this apartment, so I think it might be buried in boxes, but it's, I think it's making gay Boston history or something like that, along those lines. And it has evidence from like the 1600s on of different events that, one of my favorites is this freed Black person in the 1700s, I think 1726, was a hairdresser, lived in like a little row house or townhouse kind of thing with their partner. And it was just like such a lovely little story or like imagination of like, oh, they just woke up one day and like, one goes to the hair salon to work and the other one I think was a mason perhaps or something like that. And it was just a very cute picture of like a fantasizing of a gay couple in 1700s attire.
I did volunteer. That is a cute story. I did volunteer up in Lowell at archiving a photographic archive of a locally famous photographer up there. So I volunteered up there for all last summer, and through the winter, and then when COVID hit, that came to an abrupt stop. So, and now I'm down here.
I definitely want to keep in touch, David, because again, I don't know how long, like my stretch goals, 5-year plans. My hope is that next year we can at least get actual physical items. I can actually go to the special archives and collection and start inputting this data. That's going to be a lot of like what I imagine volunteers will be having me have them do. I also hope to get funding to do a work study for it specifically, so a student can also help and learn the archive-based programming that we use at the UMass Dartmouth Library. And so it's really just like sifting through things, putting them in folders, and then putting it in the computer in the proper data format. That's pretty much the bulk of what volunteers do, and pretty much the bulk of what I do as both a historian and an archaeologist. So it's like, again, the 1 degree away from like a fancy label of archivist.
That's basically what I was doing too. It is a little tedious and boring, but somebody has to do it. And so I was very happy to spend some time doing that. It takes many hands to create a beautiful archive eventually.
And it is tedious work, but if I, for example, I'm doing research about Elias Trotter, who was a whaler on the, oh my God, my brain's going blank. This week has been very weird. I think it's because we're leading up to Halloween. And so a lot of things have been just like floating out of my brain. He was a whaler, and he actually is from technically Sag Harbor, New York, but his diaries are actually here at the Whaling Museum. And I would not have known its existence if it was not properly cataloged and another academic referenced it. So if nothing was actually adequately cataloged or everything was logged, I would not have been able to find this treasure trove of like a dude's 2 diaries and how he talks about having gay relationships on the whaling voyage.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting. I was at a antiques shop up in Newburyport many years ago, and I'm sure we've all seen some scrimshaw, and there was a piece of scrimshaw that was very gay, erotic, sexually erotic.
Oh.
And I paused and I didn't buy it, and I've been kicking myself ever since. And this was probably 30 years ago, but so I'm always looking around now for that, because apparently it, just as you pointed out, there were gay people on those whaling ships too.
Yes, indeed.
We're everywhere, like, human sexuality is so complicated, and it's not a simple, nothing's black and white. So it's even difficult and complicated for gay people to explain themselves to people, because it's not a simple topic.
I do laugh when because currently I'm studying actually ancient Egyptian and ancient Greek history stuff in section sexuality and sex work specifically, and so it was kind of funny learning some of the terms, and I'm reading Middle Egyptian and whatnot, and there's like a bajillion terms, and so I kind of laugh when people are like, there's too many alphabet letters that we have to remember, and I was like, I just had to learn like 15 words that describe the same-ish kind of concept. But so like I could never laugh anymore about that idea today, because I had to do so much deep diving, figuring out which terms are for which people that are like numerous in ancient society.
So I want to just see if anyone has any final questions for Nick about his work, or and it is work, or Dan about his good work. And you can see Dan in many places in town too. He's not just an archivist. He's very active in the community and at the New Bedford Free Library, and we're lucky we have him here in town. Oh, and I do want to say thank you, Dan and Nick, for both presenting tonight, because they are here, they are volunteering to be here to talk to you. So, so all the more reason you should check out Play in downtown New Bedford, contribute to help Dan put together his archive by contributing to it. Look out for it. I'm sure by nature it'll only grow and be, accessible to the rest of us doing future history and research projects. So
and I'll say Play's Instagram is amazing, so definitely check that out. I don't know if you want to put it in the chat, Nick, but I do appreciate your Instagram.
Nice.
Yeah, unfortunately, I actually don't have Instagram. Come by anytime. We're open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 12 to 10. I'm sorry, 12 to 10. We still have a couple days we might be able to squeeze out of the roof deck, but we have plenty of arcade games downstairs, really good cocktails, and pretty dang good food. So if you're bored on a rainy day, come on through. We'll be waiting for you.
Excellent.
Us on Facebook as well.
If you don't mind my injecting that, I have to say, Nick, the game room is so much fun. I was so thrilled to see a gay flag. There's probably a couple more downtown, and I was so happy. I brought one of my friends in there one night, and we had a couple of drinks and played games, and the roof deck is amazing. And you guys have put together a wonderful place down there. I really appreciate it.
Yep. Well, it's not just me. It's actually Adam Katz and his wife, Lauren, who are actually the owners. I'm just lucky enough to be involved with the business. But you're right. It is a safe place for anybody, regardless of skin color, sexual orientation. It's a safe space for them. So come through. You know, we're looking forward to having you.
And we could all use some play right now, some fun,
That's right.
frivolous time,
Yes,
right?
totally agree.
Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming. David, nice to meet you. Judy and Nicole, thank you for being here. And check this out on YouTube. In a few weeks, it should be posted to our YouTube channel, which you can look for RJD Museum, which we have thanks to Jessica Serpa. Yes, no coincidence.
Hi, Jessica.
All
right. Good night, everybody. Take care and thanks.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks for hosting. I love your museum.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.